Welcome to the Midlife Podcast Show. This is Jay, the host and creator. We've got a special guest today. All right, this is for my listening audience and also for my YouTube audience. You know, I'm new at this, so if I'm trying to do any visual cues or audio cues, forgive me. But today we have Corey Jung. He is a founder of Upright Movement, specializes in locomotion. No, we're not talking about the trains, also resilience and longevity. Man, this cat, you got to see what he's been through. Former Marine. I was in the Boy Scouts, by the way. He's a tactical athlete. It's pretty badass. He's an advisor for MARSOC, for the Marine Corps community. That's the Special Forces, if you don't know what that is. An advisor for U.S. Forest Service. He's about an advisor for everything other than McDonald's. This guy, if you see him, for my listening audience, I need you to, when you finish with this, you need to get on the YouTube because he's opposite of Jim Hoff, the Iceman. I think it's Jim Hoff, the Iceman, you know, that runs around in shorts.
Wim Hof.
Wim Hoff. I'm from the South. We call him Jim. Jim
Okay.
Hoff.
Okay, gotcha.
So, as you could tell, he's like, Corey right now is like in Tibet with the snow-crested mountains, and he's got a fire behind him that's raging. So, Corey, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for correcting me. William, I know you were looking at me pre-show and going, who the hell is
Oh, yeah, I was thinking, who's Jim again?
That is his southern brother, Jim.
Yes. You are correct.
How's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
Man, I am vertical.
It's a good thing.
Yes, I'm going to tell you. Most of my people know that I'm in law enforcement. Most of people know that I'm a El Capitan, and I get calls 24/7. And the world, man, today. I mean, the homicide rates, the robbery rates. I got called last night about 9 o'clock where an old man was going to buy some land. Had 15 grand in his pocket. I think he went and met the wrong people. He left. Somebody followed him, and a couple people beat the living crap out of him and took his money. left him for dead.
Yeah.
That's the reason why another part that I came out of the law enforcement closet, kind of a quarter way of doing this podcast and being unafraid of letting people know that I'm in the law enforcement community, because it is the midlife show, right? I'll be 46 next month. I'm trying to promote health, wellness, financial, spiritual, the whole thing of, because you're in your mid years, the game's not over. We just started, man. We've got a lot to offer now that we're at this age. We can turn around, and the people that are climbing the mountain, we can give them a hand up and be these wise sages and give them this motivation and experience and all the pitfalls that we experienced, so they don't have to. Right? That's what we're doing here. We're building communities, and I love this kind of stuff. I really do, and I really appreciate you being on the show, man. I mean, let's start out. So you got out of high school, you went in the Marine Corps.
Yes, and I had no plan B. Let's say.
All right.
I had an abusive childhood household, and the language at times that would be used towards me, especially for my mother, was she would say something along the lines, "I wouldn't even take you to a dog fight." So it was that sort of upbringing. And when I graduated high school, it was like, okay, you're out of the house. That's it. And so I looked towards another community, and to basically, I'm venturing off on my own. It's the journey. It's the unknown and perhaps terrifying. And I felt, the Marine Corps, because, I experienced a lot of abuse growing up by way of my parents, and so I saw perhaps the Marine Corps as a way to armor myself and become invincible in
How long did you serve?
in some ways.
How
4
long did you
years.
serve?
4 years.
What was your MOS?
I was in military police. And then towards the later half of my time in service, it was SRT, so Special Reaction Team.
Right.
And it helped guide me, the Marine Corps, because, you know, given my background, I had a little bit of anger, if not a lot of anger, you know, because
Did it not bolster your anger being in the Corps? Because, you know, they're known to rip you completely down, like bare naked bones, and to build you up. A lot of things I've heard about the Marine Corps. Now, I wasn't in service, but I am in law enforcement. But my dad was in the Navy in Vietnam, and my brother was in the Marine Corps, who's 8 years older than me. So, and he graduated from Parris Island in '88.
Oh, same time period.
So, he was a Dragon operator. I don't know what numbers that is.
Dragons, I remember they were tanks at the time.
Yeah, the tow, that kind of stuff. Anyway,
yeah.
So did you was you still on the west side?
Yes, I'm what they call a Hollywood Marine.
Yeah, yeah. But are we related? Because I'm gonna tell you, I too was abused by a relative, sexually and violently when I was 10 years old. And I'm a Christian, and I'm faith based, and I believe that God allowed something to happen to me, not out of meanness or being ugly, but He saw way down the road what I was going to become because of that. One, to help people go through the same thing that I went through.
Yeah.
But knew that I was a sheepdog in the waiting, that I was going to be a protector from the wolves.
Yep.
Because I wasn't protected, that I was going to make damn sure others that I could, in my span of view, right, in my reach, I was going to make damn sure that everybody was going to be protected under me. What do you think about that?
No, you took the words out of my mouth. I would say at an unconscious level, that was a big reasoning in me going into service, the Marine Corps, as well as the San Diego Police Department afterwards. It was to help those who couldn't help themselves, unlike myself earlier in my life. It's almost as if I was trying to save myself through these people, you know, and be the protector and be the sheepdog, like you said. Because unfortunately, yeah, I remember hearing this first years ago. I think it's Lieutenant Colonel Grossman.
Right.
Right. And he said that there's 3 types of people. There's sheepdogs, there's sheep, and there's wolves. And I feel that's more or less the case.
And you know, when you get into law enforcement, I'm sorry for cutting you off. I've got a bad habit.
No, you're good. You're good.
Man, or take one of those fire sticks and throw them at me. When you get into law enforcement, I'll tell you, I said there's 2 types of people inside our community. I'll say in the world, you're either call the police or you are the police. There's only 2 types. You're going to either call the police or you are the police, you know, because we're running to things that other people are running away from. And I'm proud to be called to be the police. Not to say that in my civilian capacity where I live, I do not enforce where I live. I live in another county, right? That I'm not going to call the police if needed, but at least I know how to handle my own and my family if danger comes my way. Man, I'm proud of you, dude. I'm proud of you. I really am. I mean, we're like kindred spirits, really.
Likewise. And
man, I really appreciate your service in the Corps, what you're doing. I'm loving on you right now, Corey. You need some loving.
I hear you, and I love you too. And
I'd
say we're survivors.
We
as
are
well.
survivors, and we're survivors.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get through that? Because if you'll go and listen to I have a podcast on my childhood abuse, where I'll call it, us Southerners will say, our oil light kicked in, where I went through people.
Oil.
Yeah, oil light.
Oil light. Gotcha.
Oil. Earl light. Who's
mm-hmm.
Earl? I was a sergeant working permanent nights, and that's when my father passed away, and my mom had multiple strokes and had to be put in a rest home. It's a lot of crap, and I had compartmentalized that abuse, that childhood abuse, and put it in my Pandora's box and stowed it away.
Yep.
And then things in my life where, it's called pennies in a bank. You keep putting pennies in a bank, and then one day those pennies are going to overflow. It's not like the traumatic things of war or stuff in our law enforcement career, shootings or stabbings or fighting, whatever it is. We can get through that. It's the everyday mundane things that we do, we store up. And then if you don't know how to cope with that, if you don't know how to have an outlet, it will open up. And it did for me. And I had my first battles of anxiety, depression. I had to be put on medicine if I wanted to stay married. If I, so I had suffered and experienced the PTSD part. And it kind of came full circle where I used to tell people on calls that wanted to medicate, or I called them weak. I'm like, suck it up, buttercup, take your damn medicine and roll on. They're like, I don't like taking medicine. I don't feel good. I didn't understand that because I've never been through that part of it. Now, the abuse side I had, but the medicine side of dealing with this anxiety, depression, bipolar, whatever it is. And then when it came, I think God was laughing and going, hey, Jay, you're going to understand that because we're going to fast forward the tape. And I dealt with that as well. Did you have anything like that, or were you able, through the military and your law enforcement career, attack it better than I did?
Different. Same, but different. So I've had some experiences, and the term that was used for me, considering my history early on in life, and then adulthood, and then my profession being law enforcement, and then having the military background as well, is that they said, oh, you have and let me backtrack a little bit too. You're familiar with ACEs, correct?
Yes. So
I have 8 out of the 10 ACEs, right? I got a B. I'm at 80% B, and so they say, well, you have CPTSD, you have complex. I don't have the simple one, right? If I'm going to do it, I'm going to go big, I'm going to I don't want the simple. I want the complex one. I'm going to do give me the full deal here. And so, this has been going on for years and decades. But then I was mentioning in the pre-interview that, I had that off-duty officer survival class early in the academy. And then they were given the big panorama as far as what this profession entails, and that it's not like you can just flip a switch on off. You're going to have some residual, and have some situational awareness, and be aware that this does take a toll on you to whatever degree, and that there's some things that you can do to help to self-regulate, to help offset these things. And so they were really big into nutrition, lifestyle, awareness, basically, general health. Because the thing is that the human body is multitudes, right? It's not mind and body. It's both, and it's you can't have one without the other unless you go into politics, right? Right. So it's the whole. So it's from the neck on up. It's from the neck on down. The old saying, a sound mind and a sound body. So I was really gung ho in making sure that I was addressing, managing that, but I wasn't addressing so much the mental and emotional aspect, especially, this like self inquiry, introspection.
Right.
And then, yeah, it did come to a collapse on duty. And I don't know if yours was anything like this, but I got to the point where I could not remember longer than 30 seconds. I was 10-8 on duty, right, driving a black and white.
Right.
Right. I'm going to calls, and I'm having like an event where like I'm thinking to myself, geez, do I have some like brain lesion thing?
Oh, okay. Right.
Right. Is this like something that my brain, my body is just saying, okay, I'm just shutting down. I can't remember more than 30 seconds. I couldn't feel. I had no sensation as far as like I'm touching my hand. Right. I couldn't feel that. I was having tunnel vision. I couldn't see,
That's dangerous.
I'm driving.
Yes.
I'm driving. I am driving. The Tijuana border region. I'm going to calls. I'm on the I-5 during the daytime.
Right.
Right. I'm having to commute from the border back home. Rush hour traffic. So I have a whole shift, 10 hours like this. I think I'm dying, and I'm lucky. I'm probably lucky that I didn't. I'm probably lucky that no one else died while I was on duty. Because I'm like, so like, for whatever reason, I'm able to switch on and, bring it together while I'm going to, and I'm at a call, and then I'm just kind of going 10-7 out of service for a while, and I'm basically catching a breather. And
Isn't it funny how our community does that, and people don't realize that, is that our life can be shit. Total crap. You could have had the worst argument with your partner or with your kids. You're dealing with everybody else's problems, all day long. You come home, have to deal with yours, and then like introspect, like when you are really reflecting on your life and say, like, for you and I have been abused and hadn't even touched that yet. It's so complex, as you say. But then when we go to a call, we're able to flip that switch, deal with it, be professional, handle business, be able to have collective thoughts, be able to, in split seconds, people don't realize split seconds we're making decisions, good or bad or indifferent. You got to make a decision when on these calls. I mean, being ineffective is not being able to make a freaking decision and just stand there. So we're doing our job. But soon as we're done with whatever the call is, we get in a car, like you say, okay, all right, now for us on the eastern side, we're on a call, and when we clear a call, whatever the code would be, but we'll say 10-8, whatever it is. But we're just driving around and we're in service, but there's not a call right. And then we pull in a parking lot or somewhere, a church or wherever, school parking lot, and we're in freaking shambles, man. I've been there.
Yeah.
I mean, the anxiety hit me so bad that I was a sergeant at the time over a platoon and working permanent nights. So, night shift is usually the hotter calls, right? Sometimes between midnight till 4 o'clock, it's a hit or miss. You might not get any calls, but when you do, they're going to be pretty severe calls, right? All the naked people come out, the cockroaches come out. It's fun times. It's like, hey, don't tempt me with a good time, America.
You remember that song? You remember that one of the early hip hop song? I think it was called, the lyrics were something along the lines, "The freaks come out at night."
Yes.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Hey, America, they do. Corey and I, I'm telling you from experience, it gets real freaky deaky up here.
Zombies are real. Zombies are real.
You damn right they are, and they're called meth heads.
Yeah, or PCP or whatever. Yeah,
or whatever. And see, look, what's what's very interesting and very special about this podcast, right? Other than your fire and your Tibetan mountains in the background.
It's
Can we do a GoFundMe page for Corey, people? He's out in the damn wilderness. Please send money to Upright Movement.
No.
Anyway, so he's on the west side law enforcement. I'm on the east side law enforcement. It's the same damn job. We experience the same freaking things. There's different cultures. Like when I grew up in my academy, they said suck it up. I mean, really, there was no nutrition, there was no anything in our academy. There was no special classes. Y'all, and I say y'all, California were more healthier. And I don't know if it was because of Hollywood or it was that culture because of it was well known on that coastline for like Muscle Beach with Arnold and everybody, that there was more, it was promoted more in the 70s, than
right.
the side. I don't know, but we didn't talk about that shit. Mental health was a place you took all the damn crazy people. It wasn't about your mental health. And I'm glad they did that for y'all, and I'm surprised they didn't say, hey, man, we'll go to the beach and, surf, man. That's awesome. I'm messing with you. But for us, they didn't tell us jack crap. And you had to figure that out. And you know how my health was, because I'm 6'3", I'm 240. I'm a big youngin'. Then still 6'3". Might have been a little taller than that with age. I was younger. I was 270, and I had some fat on me.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was a pretty stout kid coming out of the academy. But when you're working rotating shifts and going to call to call to call, and when I was a city cop first, call to call to call to call to call, and they put me, Big Whitey, in the hood. So I was damn jumping runs, car chases, domestic shootings, stabbings, the whole 9 yards. The only thing open was like a Taco Bell or a McDonald's, and I was, double fisting cheeseburgers and large shakes,
right?
Or going to the Stop and Rob and getting Jolt Cola. You remember Jolt Cola?
Jolt, oh yeah,
yeah. I was known for Jolt Cola and Dunkin' sticks, like the little Dunkin', like it was like donut sticks.
Oh, okay,
yeah. So that was me. And I put on like, I was.
This is like graveyard. This is like during the graveyard times,
right? And I was, new to the job, but the stress that it put on me, I gained. Like they talk about, like the freshman 10. No, man, you don't know it. You don't know. You wonder why first responders are so unhealthy. There are that are healthy, but. You ever been on a scene? And I know we're kind of, for us, we can sit here and soapbox all day, but we're talking about health. We're going to get into the upright movement because it's important.
Right.
But do you remember going on calls and the paramedics coming out and them some big youngins? And you're like, how the hell are they going to help this guy out? And they're smoking on a cigarette. They're 300 pounds and they're paramedics. They're supposed to be like, giving medical aid, and they can barely breathe themselves. I mean, for the eastern side, that's what we dealt with.
No, I saw that quite often. I saw that within my peers as well. So I would say the majority of the first responder community, fire, paramedics, police, in that we're working these crazy shifts, 24/7, 365. And so there's so many things that are kind of going against health, so you have the shift work, which basically is going to be very disruptive to circadian rhythms, our nervous system and a hormonal system. And then, also with that, there's going to be a social aspect that it's going to impact us negatively because many of our friends, family, and loved members and loved ones that we have relationships with, they're not on graveyards. And so we have to totally like flip flop our schedules and our days off in order to have time with them. Right. And and then, like you said, like what's available 3 o'clock in the morning. And a lot of times when you have disrupted sleep like that, our body is kind of like a little bit whacked out, and so that is a symptom often when you have. So if you're going to have disrupted sleep, that's going to influence the many other systems of the body, and so it's going to also influence your eating and metabolism. And so when you're fatigued, you have your decision making isn't 100%, and your your resistance to making poor choices isn't going to be the best either. So
Right.
You're gonna give in to the treat more so than when you're fully rested. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And so, yeah, and in our community, often we like to give assistance to others, and then we're the last ones in a lot of cases, unfortunately. And then, yeah, we have a high percentage of people who are overweight, obese, and heart disease, cancer. I don't know what it is on your department or your former department. So I remember it was like 5 or so years after I had been on with San Diego that I heard or I investigated for whatever reason as far as you know health, illness, and how the department, workman's comp wise, right?
Right.
And so I found out it's like after being vested on the department for at least 5 years, then when you got something perhaps like heart disease, stroke, cancer, fill in the blank, that was an automatic presumptive part of the job.
Wow.
Does that ring a bell
Yes.
with your department as well?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, they're saying, so the city and the department knows good and well after spending at least 5 years that if you get cancer, that is job related. When I found out that, I know I was like in my early 30s, I was like, what the hell is this? So not only will the job, well, it does have a high likelihood of potential injury and or death, like while you're on duty,
Right.
but also beyond that, as far as the totality of your life and that of your health.
I
So
was diagnosed.
it's crazy. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was diagnosed 6 months ago with tinnitus, real bad. I got ringing in my ears, really, really
Mm,
bad. And I know where it come from. And it wasn't from my love of rock music, and I do play guitar. But um, do you remember when the siren boxes were on top of the cars,
hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And then they switched. OSHA
To
switched it
the bumper, to the front
to the
bumper.
for the front bumper,
Yeah.
and my department thought it was great, so you could hear dispatch to put the freaking inside speaker right there at the driver's side door.
Mm, nice.
Yeah, so you're constantly, as a cop in a car, you're turning radios. It's like you're a DJ, right? Turning
Hmm.
your regular FM AM radio down. You're trying to turn it up, turn it down because you got soft talkers, loud talkers. Some of the dispatch not coming through. It's a
Hmm.
damn game, right? You're pushing
Hmm.
buttons like you're a astronaut
Oh yeah, or
over the
a fighter
yeah
pilot, a fighter pilot.
fighter pilot, right? So you're doing all that, and so I got diagnosed that I've got some hearing loss in my left ear, and I talked to our lady from workers comp, and she said, yeah, the labor commission, she said, we tried to do that for y'all, especially your older ones, that we knew that you had the siren boxes and how things were displayed in your car back in the 90s. They know it and they've done studies, but she said the labor department would not do anything for that. They're like, oh
Mm.
well, it's part of your job, right? Like it's not cancer, but
Yeah.
I get, yeah, but that's what they say. It's part of your job. I had an officer that was getting something out of the trunk, slipped and fell and broke his arm. Workers' comp,
Jeez.
workers' comp wouldn't cover it. They said you wasn't doing your job. You're just getting some out of the trunk. They're like,
while I'm on duty.
I'm on duty, man. They're
Yeah.
like, sorry. I'm like, get out of here. They're like, yeah, and then they're like, yeah, because if you're, and this lady told me stuff, she was nice. So she told me stuff that her boss would frown upon. She was like, look, I'm going to tell you, Jay, if you just opened your car door and fell out, they wouldn't cover that. You're kidding me, right? We're on duty. They're like, yeah. So I get it, right? There's so much. So let's get down to, we got so much to talk about. So upright movement.
Yes, sir.
When did that come about?
Upright movement for me, I would say, is an extension of my early adult career, Marine Corps and law enforcement, as a way for me to maintain my mind body. You got to take care of your gear, right?
Right.
What's your number one piece of gear, right? What's your number one asset?
Me?
Right? Exactly.
My body.
Yeah. So whatever we are carrying, on us on duty, those are tools. Those are, need to haves, nice to haves, but like first and foremost, need to have is this, a sound mind and a sound body. I don't know if you're familiar with that one term, that one community, hopology, for instance. I guess going back to ancient Greece and, the warriors going back to, and times of antiquity, is that one mind, any weapon.
Okay.
One mind, any weapon. And so I'm only as good, I got all the tools, right? All the fancy, all the cool and all the tactical types gear up there nowadays.
Oh yeah.
But that's only as good as I am myself in this body vessel vehicle here. So it's like you see this in the military, especially the special forces, is that they really emphasize, physical fitness, performance, and it's also a form of stress inoculation, right? If you can handle, like, if you can handle PT stress out in the grinder and doing surf drills, all right, as a Navy SEAL, for instance, a lot of times that's going to have residual benefits when things are really hitting the fan.
Right.
Because as far as the body is concerned, stress is stress. Whether you're doing you're making sugar cookies out in the Coronado Beach there, rolling out in the sand, and surf drills and log drills, that's one stressor. But like someone shooting at you, that's another stressor. It could be a positive, like holiday stressor. So at a cellular and a nervous system level, it's all stress. And that our bucket, that like for each stressor coming into the system, that's one in the bucket, that's another one in the bucket, right? That's a finite capacity. That's a finite capacity. And so this kind of bringing it back home again. It was a way for me to maintain myself and balance like the stress with the rest, because it can't be all stress. We will. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how we'll break. So if you just keep on putting stress in that bucket, or let's just say for everything that you do at a biological level, right, at a psychological level, it's like taking your credit card and swiping it and charging it. Okay. Work stress, swipe, family stress, swipe. I got audited this year by the IRS. Swipe. My car broke down. Swipe. Right. The list goes on and on. If I keep on swiping that card, eventually I'm going to get to the point to where that card is going to say at the checkout stand, insufficient funds, card declined. Right. So we got to put some things back into the system to help offset and balance that. So this is like the autonomic nervous system. This is sympathetic stress, parasympathetic stress, right? So the sympathetic is the fight, flight, or freeze, which, as a first responder, that's pretty much your world. You're responding to things, right, that are sympathetic dominant, fight, flight, or freeze. Things are hitting the fan. But then ideally you want to put some deposits relative to those withdrawals that are more restorative, the parasympathetic side. So nutrition, rest and digest, and repair, and the immune system function. Because I remember seeing early on in my career that the officers that weren't so mindful and managing some of those things so much for themselves, it seemed to me that they were aging faster, and that they were experiencing, states of decline faster health wise. And then I was starting to see people dropping dead of a heart attack in their mid 30s.
Yes.
And then I'm starting to, hear more and more of this, and then, actually see FBI statistics that supposedly first responders can experience up to 22 and a half years less life expectancy. So I was like, this is baloney. I didn't sign up for this. I'm signing up for help, to help people for sure.
Right.
But to be another statistic of these stressors, that the totality that this is having on me, I was like, no, not interested in that. So I was really wanting to do whatever I can to help offset this. And then going back further, as far as my childhood goes, both my parents were not exactly healthy and happy. They were angry drunks. And they also had a lot of, health issues, because that's all that they're doing,
right.
as far as taking care of themselves, that they weren't just, pounding a bunch of whiskey and vodka. And they both died pretty early in their 60s. And then my father died when I was 17, my mother when I was 21. So my father was cancer of the esophagus, which a lot of times is brought on by excessive drinking. And my mother was cirrhosis of the liver. And then they weren't the most healthy, vital people when they're like in their 50s. They had me later on in life. My father was like 50 or so, and my mother was like mid 40s when she had me.
Okay.
And so, yeah, and then they both died in their mid 60s or so. And what I was saying, that like they were trapped in their bodies because their bodies were in a state of decline, poor health and fitness. They were trapped in this pain body, prison of sorts. So I remember, seeing that early on in my life too, and saying to myself, like, no, this has no interest appeal to me. Like, I don't want this as my future, as an adult. Like, no, being in chronic pain and miserable and angry and hurt people a lot of times, unfortunately.
That was me, man. My dad
hurt people.
Yes, my dad was he was a volunteer fireman. He worked in a mill. They forced retired him after 62 years. Think about that. 62 years in a mill.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was going strong, but when they forced him out, he had no hobbies. He didn't take good care of himself. And he sat in a chair and watched old cowboy movies and gained like 150 pounds. Got diagnosed with diabetes to the point where they're going to take his leg. He had asbestosis from being on a ship in Vietnam, which that and kidneys and congestive heart failure, that trifecta took his life. We were going to Durham every other weekend for something with him to the VA, and it finally caught up with him. The asbestosis, I mean, he was in good shape in the military, but but everything else, the smoking, right? Now, he didn't drink, but the smoking, the overeating, the stresses of working, and then being a volunteer fireman. I mean, that is a first responder, even though it's volunteer, it's still first responder.
Mhm.
And my mom smoked like a freight train. They did not take good care of themselves, and I saw that. And and then when I had my first year in law enforcement, and I got close to 300 pounds, I was like, Jay, man, you're in your early 20s. You got to lose some freaking weight. Like, you look
Yeah.
horrible for one, but it was not for me. It was not aesthetics because back then there was no social media, right? There was no selfies. It was just getting ready and looking at myself and going, bro, the gun belt check. If you've lost or gained weight by
Oh
putting on
yeah.
a gun belt.
Uh-huh.
And when I got to that last hole,
You're like, uh-oh.
and my old belly was poking out, and when you took your uniform off and you had marks on your
Mm.
sides from the gun belt,
Yeah.
it was time. And I for 6 months, man, I said, okay, I'm gonna try to eat healthier. I found a guy that was a CB in the Navy,
Mhm.
and this dude was jacked. And I ended up getting off of patrol and going to a community policing unit. And he's like, Jay, I'm going to help you out. He was a good
Nice.
dude, and he paid it forward. And I got down to 185 pounds,
Wow.
super lean, started running. That started my marathon journeys and stuff, and was starting to lift weights. And I felt phenomenal.
Mhm.
But I have an addictive personality, and that vicious cycle we could talk about later, that it just crept back, and I've been fighting that ever since. But I was able to maintain a level of fitness that did help me in my career. Then we talk about the mental health, spirituality,
Mm. Mhm.
really trying to fight those inner demons,
Right.
because the calls that you go on to, and I know I'm switching gears, but that shit weighs on you, Corey. The ethyl methyl death calls, the kids got me. You know what I'm saying? Where they got shot, or they died at infant death, and you're going to these calls and you're having to do the reports. You're having to talk to the parents or the loved ones. That stuff is what got me. I mean, it was 24/7. Those type calls that we didn't think there wasn't the campfire stories, right? That wasn't the car chases or the cool where you're jumping and running and catching the drug dealers or the robbery suspects. It was the calls that nobody talks about, all the death calls that we go to or the suicide calls that we go to. And you see that. And I don't tell you, here lately in the last 2 years, Corey, I know in the state of North Carolina, and I think with COVID, we've had more suicide
Yeah.
calls. Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, whatever the kids are doing now. Now, both my girls are teenagers. I've got one that's going to go to college next year and one that's going into high school. And they use that for cyberbullying and all. And I've seen
Mhm.
an increase in juvenile suicides, and it breaks my heart. So we have to have ways. And I'm looking at locomotion, resilience, and longevity,
Mhm.
and they're all equally important. But I told my CID sergeant yesterday. I said, "Bro, the older I'm getting, not just physicality wise, but mental health wise, damn, it's hard to get to be resilient and to bounce back." What do you say about that?
I do. I feel it's a lifelong practice, and it involves awareness. It involves having a relationship, and it involves also caring about the subject, and not just about yourself. I would say, in order for it to be really successful for someone, I would say they'd have to see and realize that it's not just about us. Right? It's not just about one person and one lifetime, especially if you have a relationship about a family, children, grandchildren, perhaps. That this is about, many generations, perhaps. And so there's an old saying, I think it's from some tribe in Africa, and that's something along the lines of Ubuntu, if that rings a bell.
Yeah.
Unbuntu, something like that. Ubuntu, like that. So they basically see that I am myself through others, and vice versa. It's like it's all interwoven. Is that the I is a part of the we, and the we is a part of the I, and so what's good for one is good for the other. You see what I'm saying? And so,
Right.
And like when it comes to healing, right? And you mentioned demons, right? So like if we're looking at this holistically,
Right.
people would say mind, body, and spirit, and perhaps other people in more tribal societies, they would go a step further, and that would be land, tribe, and ancestors.
Okay.
And so ancestors could be like many generations, 4 generations, 7 generations, for instance. And that, so like if you heal yourself, you're healing your ancestors. That's huge. I mean, so because I've had some, dark nights of the soul. And, I've had the times with some therapists, and they would ask me, they say, given your background, a lot of times people who've had your experiences are either addicts, they're convicts, they've been in prison or are in prison, or they commit suicide. So she was asking me, she says, how in the hell did you avoid this? And I said to her, like, because this is my belief system, I said, like, I have a responsibility. Like, I have to do this. And not just for me, I have to do this for my ancestors.
Mm.
And, I didn't go into this prior, but I'll say it now because since we're on the subject. So I'm adopted.
Okay.
And so the reason I was adopted is because my mother, I imagine she was going through postpartum. She hung herself when I was 6 months old.
Story.
So I probably saw that as an infant.
Oh man, that's deep.
And so I think about that. It's like, I have to do this for my mother.
Dude, it's okay, man. And I thank you for sharing. And this is what's people, if you're not on YouTube watching this, Corey's a little upset, as you can tell. This is real. This ain't fake. This is not for thumbs up or likes. This is for making changes. You're talking to two people that got in a career that are thousands of miles apart for the same mission. And we don't know each other, Corey, correct? This is not like we don't know each other.
We know the type of people that we are there.
Right.
We see each other in each other.
How do you think that you and I got together having similar backgrounds, but don't live near each other, but similar backgrounds, being abused, being called to serve, loving people so much, even our enemies, that agape love of, that even the people that spit on us, we're still going to serve and protect. When the boogeyman is at the intersection of right and wrong, and we're standing there and said, I don't give a shit if the people behind me hate me. You got to go through me first. That's to the core. That is the essence of a real law enforcement officer. That is not a gender. That is not a race. That is our family. That is what we sign up to do, to stand at those intersections of life and say, yeah, you got to get through me, bud. And you a big unit. the boogeyman, but you better bring your damn lunch. You better pack a lunch to get through me. And it takes a toll. There's so much negativity in law enforcement right now. And Corey and I talked about this pre-show, and I wanted him to talk about this with his upright movement and his ability to talk about locomotion, resilience, and longevity. But I asked him, I said, "Hey, man, are you up for the task? Because this episode, I hope it changes people's lives. One, if you're a civilian listening to this, to have a different aspect when you look at the men and women that are protecting and serving. We go through a lot, and we're not asking for anything. We just want you to have our back. Show a little love and say thank you. That's all we ask. Say thank you. We signed up for it. We get paid to do it. And our brothers and sisters that are listening, that are called to serve, if you're a first responder and you need help, listen to these two individuals, Corey and I, who had a rough upbringing and went through the damn mill and back. And if we can do it, you can do it. And there's a community there. You can reach out to us. And it's more than just fitness and nutrition. It's more than having six-pack abs, and doing a selfie. That's not what it's about. Because we have a real issue in America when it comes of the obesity. We have an issue in our community of health. We do have law enforcement has the highest divorce rate, highest suicide rate, drug addiction. Corey, I'm with you, brother, and I'm sorry. I am sorry, but I'm glad and proud of you. And I'm being straight up. I'm proud of you, man, that you can be vulnerable. You can be sandblasted. That's what I call it. We're sandblasted to the bone and be so vulnerable to speak the truth. I don't know if you've done it on another podcast. I don't think you have.
No.
And to say, everybody is fighting something. God bless you, man. God bless you. I supervised a multiple officer involved shooting, and I had to go to mental health doctors to get cleared. I was not involved, but I was managing the scene as a patrol sergeant. And they said the same. I'm telling you, man, we're brothers from another mother. Because that psychologist said, "Hey, bro, you a little intense." And I was like, "What?" It's like, "I'm having a good day. I just need you to clear me so I can go back to work." And I'm like, "Man, you're intense." I said, "Well, that's what people say." And he goes, "I bet you don't have a lot of friends." I said, "Have you been talking to my wife?" He's like, "You're like the Black Spider-Man." He's like, "You're intense." But he did tell me, and I told him my story, and he was like, drug addict, prison, And my thing was, if not me, then who? Who else is going to carry the flame behind you to protect and serve? Even being jacked up from the floor up, who else is going to go out there and protect and serve? We've got to do it. We've got to have a strong community of sheepdogs. But we have to, that's why we're here, but we have to take care of ourselves, right, Corey?
It's like, if everybody did this, then a sound mind and a sound body. In many cases, people are going to come to a place of peace and ease within themselves. And so, to the point that they're at that state, in most cases, they're not interested in nonsensical things, right? So they're not going to be, goofing off and being stupid and harming. Like if you're not in a prison of the five senses, this pain body prison. It reminds me of Joseph Campbell. I don't know if you're familiar with Joseph Campbell, right?
Tell us.
He's a professor. He was a former professor of mythology. He passed away sometime during the 80s, and I think he was well into his 80s as well. But he was a person who wrote, I think, 1946 or so. The book was called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. So he was really big into mythology.
Okay.
And that the myths, early civilization to present day, a lot of them have lessons and perhaps leave breadcrumbs and guidestones to help us to navigate life. And that mythology is one way for us as humans to manage some of the harshness, the realities of life. And so if we had, so he said something along the lines that a vital person helps to vitalize. So the more alive you are within your own, microcosm of a world, right? Imagine how that could radiate out into the world. So to the point that why I said earlier that hurt people,
Right.
well, flip that coin over. The opposite of hurt, wellness, happy, vital, right? You're gonna, right, help others to experience that as well. That's and so, and unfortunately, that's not so much the case a lot of times. And so in this country, we have a lot of illness and disease and overweight and obesity, and I feel a lot of the things that you see in the news and that we've responded to and that you still are presently today are symptoms of a person who's unhealthy, unhappy, not at ease within their mind, body, and so they're going to act out, right? And then we have a culture, a dominant culture, a consumeristic culture that really drives like consumerism a lot of times. And that's so like these external things to bring us happiness, and not so much just like this inner wealth of wellness, of health, of fitness, of equanimity, of healthy relationship with self, others, and place, right? It's all about the latest and greatest a lot of times. So we're in a war, whether we realize it or not. And I think first responders are at the what is it? We're up close and personal.
We're at the forefront.
Yeah, we're at the forefront of the war, and the war is that of the ego and the all-consuming self.
Yes.
The all-consuming self, right? Because if that's like what's really driving us in our daily lives and our experience and interaction of life, is that if it's more ego based and consuming, you'll never be happy. You'll never be happy. No, I gotta keep on buying the latest and greatest iPhone and car, and I have to have the latest and greatest relationship, as far as, oh, I gotta have someone who's younger and better looking perhaps, or someone with more money, right? If that's what's really driving our actions, we'll never be happy, will we?
Well, inside the community, you'll see it when it comes to promotions. Does a corporal or sergeant or lieutenant captain, so on and so forth, I'll tell people, are you going for it because you feel led to do it? Like you are not only qualified, but you have a passion to step up and be a leader of leaders? Or do you just want the rank so you can walk around with the candy? Look at me, I'm a sergeant. It's like you're hunting for chevrons. And I'll tell people, look, because you can be a leader without having any stripes, and because you have it doesn't make you a good leader. It's all about effective leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a detective that is just wants to get promoted. And he is the most bitter, jaded, and miserable individual that I know. And I had to get up with him and say, dude, you're miserable. You're not happy. And I don't think this promotion is going to make you happy. You say it will, but no, you're not going to be happy. And just like you said, the world now, I think less is more. The older I get, the less crap that I want. And I would love to be actually in that background that you have, right?
Yeah.
You're planted on earth. You're earthing, right?
Yeah,
You know
exactly.
that. You're
Yeah.
earthing,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're one with the earth. You've got the fire going. Maybe you catch you a fish or something and you're eating it. It's natural, right? You're feeling the cold and you're feeling the heat.
Yeah.
And there's stressors there of survival, but all the bullshit of the cell phones
Mm-hmm.
and the look at me generation, right? And that's what's tearing this country apart. But it's
Yeah.
inside every culture, every business, no matter just law enforcement, is that we're selling our souls to get that next rung. We're trying to grab that brass ring. And I had one of my supervisors tell me, they're like, Jay, you're going to go far, but remember where you come from and remember contentment. Because I'm very type A. I have a internal drive that has done me well for this job and being in, going through the steps of my career, but it is my Achilles heel. I only have two gears, sixth and park. I'm bipolar, man. I take freaking medicine for it. I've
Yeah.
suffered PTSD. I'm an old Datsun, right? Just puttering around and black smoke coming out of the tailpipe. It's so I have to. This is why we're talking. I've had to put more time and energy in self, but not self as in look at me. It's defining who I am. That's why I started this podcast when I turned 45, going through kind of like a midlife crisis. 5 more years to where I retire. I've been a cop, right? What else am I going to do? What can I give that I've served so long? Trying to plan for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt led to start a website and a podcast and do some of that introspection, do some of that reflection of examining yourself to the core. Nobody wants to see the ugly, right? And I'm trying to get that ugly out. And like you said, I'm trying to fill my bucket with the good things, not just so I can hold on to that bucket, so I can pour all that onto people, right? That agape love, you're talking to spirituality. And as a Christian, I think of the two greatest commandments is love thy God with all your heart and soul and mind, and also love your neighbor. Who's your neighbor, Corey? You're my neighbor, and we're thousands of miles away. The two gentlemen that I told you about that beat up the old guy that robbed him of money last night when I got a phone call. They're my neighbor. Why are they doing that? They're hurting, right?
They might be just as much, if not more, spiritually bankrupt than actually, financially bankrupt. And so they had an ego outburst where that was driving their behavior.
Right. So I'm not saying that, we make our own choices and we make good ones and we make bad ones. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to say, well, they're just victims. You know what I'm saying? But if we get to the core of humanity, like you were talking about, there's so many hurting people in the world. They don't know who to turn to because everybody, if you go to social media, it's try this pill, try this diet, try this. I can be your life coach and put this money here and there. Who the hell, how do you know who to turn to?
It reminds me of the hero's journey. And so the hero's journey is basically, the call to adventure, right? It's the initiation, it's the unknown, the perhaps terrifying. You're going from the known world to the unknown world, right? And perhaps you're going to then experience something from the ordinary to the extraordinary. So there's full circle, separation, initiation, and the return. So the return is basically sharing with your fellow humans to help them with their journey. And that when the journey for the Holy Grail, for instance, this is what I've heard about it, is that the person, the knights who went on the quest, their
Right.
hero's quest for the Grail, they entered the forest in their own time, place, and manner. So each of us has to carve our own path, right? We can't follow someone else's path. It has to be our own authentic path. We have to have our own authentic experience. And really, from what I've heard, what the Grail is, the attainment of the Grail is the purpose of it is for you to reach your highest spiritual potential.
Okay.
And when you obtain the Grail, it's the experience, it's the realization of and having empathy and compassion. That is that represents the Grail. Yeah. So how many people in our modern day, especially in the US, are undergoing that? It's basically it's an initiation of sorts, right? We used to have initiation rites as far as the majority of humanity on the planet pre-civilization. We had rites of passage, we had initiations. It wasn't just about turning a certain age and getting, the keys to a car handed to you. It was basically an experience that brought one close to death, right? Mental, emotional, spiritual, perhaps even physical death. And that when you got to that threshold, and you got a little bit of experience as far as what's behind that curtain. When someone is not afraid of death, they can be fully present, alive, and live in the world. And once again, a vital person helps to vitalize. But we don't have that a lot of times in the modern day world, right? So people are. It's almost like you have the blind leading the blind, and deaf, dumb, and blind throughout the world and in people's lives living today, and they're just going for the shiny thing. And if you're aware of this, marketing, for instance, targets the hindbrain of the unconscious consciousness. So the hindbrain has much to do with rank, right, sexuality, and safety and survival. And so marketing is down to it's neuromarketing, it's a neuroscience. And so these corporations and as well as governments and media, they know about this good and well.
Oh yeah.
So there's another war afoot.
Oh yeah.
And that's the war of the mind. And that a lot of times people's thoughts and ideas aren't authentically theirs. They've more or less have been planted into them by way of this technology to press the buttons to get you to consume. There's this one psychologist. His name's I'm probably butchering his name. He's a Frenchman, Clater Rapaille, something along those lines. And I remember seeing him on the internet, and he was giving an interview and a documentary on this subject because he consults with Fortune 500 companies. So he helps those companies with their marketing tactics, right? And so he said something like this in the interview. He says, "Give me the reptile. I want the reptile." Talking about the reptilian brain, for instance.
Right.
And if we look at public relations, marketing, AKA marketing, the founder of public relations, early 20th century, Edward Bernays, right? If you're familiar with him, he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud.
Oh.
So basically, he borrowed from his uncle as far as his uncle's insight into the human psyche and how to manipulate us and how to manipulate the masses, and much of it for profit, right? And
some people, Corey, will be like, that's some conspiracy, but I think it's true. Like,
well, just follow the money. Follow the money.
Yeah, follow the money. I tell people all day, they're like, look at this new generation. I'm like, they're brainwashed, man.
I remember seeing an interview with Edward Bernays, and I think in the early 20th century, when he began that field, that there was a shift from corporations and the government to see the everyday person as a consumer more than a citizen. So you have a bunch of consumers out there consuming who are more or less deaf, dumb, and blind, and they really don't know what this is all about, what life is about. They're thinking about they're chasing this shiny object, and they're chasing success, but they're not so much about happiness. And so success is getting what you want, but happiness is wanting what you get. Mm-hmm. And to go back to Joseph Campbell, it's not so much life. He felt it wasn't so much about happiness. It's about an experience and purpose of life. And that if you have a purposeful life, that basically helps one to have a sense of equanimity, despite some of the harsh reality, some of the tragedy and malevolence of life.
Yeah, what society is living worldwide is what I would say they're living a Pavlov life. Remember the Pavlov dog test?
Oh yeah.
Boop.
Mm-hmm.
Little cookie or little dog treat.
Getting my dopamine hit.
Exactly, and you have to break that cycle, and sometimes you have to stand alone in the cold or the heat. I keep talking about that because that view, yeah, and sometimes you have to stand alone naked. Maybe like really naked, but really you got to strip it down to the bare bone basics and look at yourself of who you are as an individual, not having the filters. We like to put filters, to look better. No, man, I like this ugly mug. It's old. This is rode hard, put up wet mileage. Being a servant, you know what I'm saying? I love it.
You've earned those.
Hey, Corey, I've earned every damn bit of it. And you, my friend, I'm jealous because you're older than me, and you look like like you're playing in Incubus. Remember the band Incubus? Like you're just jamming with Incubus and bands in the 90s. You look good, man. You look younger than me, and I'm like, damn, I need to get up with him on human optimization. So the upright movement, is this web based? Is this some people? Is it a gym? What is this?
Well, it's a movement to help people to be vital in the world.
Okay.
Right. And so movement is interacting with our environment.
All right.
Right. Right. We can have a relationship, interact within ourselves, with others, within place. And if we don't have the ability to move, if we don't have the ability to feel, right, imagine how our life might be. Right. So I really feel that when one has the abilities, and are able to do that well and without being in pain, because unfortunately in this country nowadays, we have 100 million people or so in chronic pain, right? And how much of that is physical? Right? How much is that mental, emotional, right, spiritual, right? Both and. So I it's an extension of my life. And I saw this within patrol as well. So I've gone to about 60,000 or so calls of service over a 20-year time span, right? And it's like Groundhog Day.
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, I'd go to someone's household and I would see a bunch of, let's just say, suboptimal inputs occurring, right? They're not eating healthy. You know, they have a bunch of sugary processed foods in their home. A lot of times they're overweight, if not perhaps obese. A lot of times single parent households. A lot of times they had a bunch of kids running around in diapers, and
Right.
and they had the surrogate parent going on in the living room, that of the TV, that of the video game. And so you're getting all this stuff that's feeding a young developing person. But I use the term from computer science, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So how much vitality are you going to get out of a bunch of boxed, sugary, processed foods? How much nourishment are you going to get from, trash TV, shoot 'em up violent video games, and perhaps one parent, if not two parents, who are traumatized, and perhaps they don't realize it, and then they're just passing on, further trauma onto the next generation, right?
Yes.
And then so I feel that the low hanging fruit to someone, let's just say turning that around, is their physical body, is this superficial layer. Right? That's a starting point. And, perhaps success can beget success, and that people perhaps then might want to go deeper. Right? I got the physical down. Okay, what about the mental? What about the emotional? What about the spiritual? Right? And so, locomotion, and I've had the honor and the responsibility to work with some people who had a significant degree of challenges that they were up against. Spinal cord injuries, for instance. People recovering from that, people having, so there were incomplete spinal cord injuries a lot of times, and coming back from the brink, right? Literally, in some cases, and having, very compromised walking abilities, and really, turning that around. To me, I mean, that was just, oh geez, it just fills my heart,
And you're doing this through the movement?
I'm doing this through like movement therapy,
hands-on, or through the interweb, or how are you doing it?
I can do this through the interweb. I prefer that the environment and the senses speak to the person.
Sure.
Because movement is ancient, movement is pre-species, is pre-language, and I really don't like to hear myself talk. And I'm the smartest one in the room is the person's body and the environment. So I'd rather just kind of sit back and say as little as possible.
Right.
Right. So I'm going to support them as far as their movement, and it's particularly, upright walking. And, I want to do things that help support their resiliency, and not just physical resilience. And I'm also interested in their longevity. Right. Life is a marathon. Right? Every day is game day. And ideally, I'd like to have people experience as much liveliness, fullness for as long as possible.
That's awesome. How do they get up with you with that? Where can they reach you?
I right now through my website and social media. Currently, I don't have a space, which I did have not so long ago, but due to COVID, and the economy and whatnot, and the prices and the real estate here in California, it's just currently not viable.
But, everybody's leaving and going to Texas.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
No. I've heard that quite a bit. So who knows?
Is it uprightmovement.com?
It's uprightmovement.com. I mean, you could Google me. You could see I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I got the one link that has all the links called Linktree.
Right.
I'm on YouTube, so you can see some of my work in action.
Okay.
That's where I prefer to have the focus. I'm just playing a bit role in this big theater stage that we're all on this, pale blue dot, the third planet from the sun. I'm just a bit, character.
Corey.
Yes, sir.
You're an important bit. From sharing your story, and we're gonna wrap it up a little bit. From listening to your story, from one sheepdog to the next, from the East Coast to the West Coast, I appreciate you. You have value. You're worthy of being loved. You have honor, and you have my respect. I hope the listening and watching crowd feel the same way I do. You're not alone. I love you. We love you. You're carrying it forward, not after your service in the military, your law enforcement. You're also with Upright Movement. It's not to sell shirts and hats and a quick get fit, in a 30-day program, because you're talking about locomotion. You're talking about movement with people that maybe not get the opportunities. When you talk about that, it reminds me of my why. You have to have an internal why.
Exactly.
Right? Your ethos, your mission statement. My mom's in a rest home. She turned 80 this year. She had multiple strokes. Her whole left side, I say, is a boat anchor. There's no movement. She has a colostomy bag. The last 7 years in a rest home in the ghetto. The ghetto. That's not a quality of life.
No.
That right there propels me to want to share this to the world, to meet interesting individuals, great humans like yourself, to pay it forward and to push hard every day, as homage to my mother, who cannot do that. Right there, and I get you, and I heard you when you're talking about that, the ancestry part, right? The resilience, buddy. You got tons of resilience from your story, and to be able to continue on, you got tons of resilience, and I appreciate you. You're dumping buckets of resilience into me right now, and then the longevity. As a Christian, I will be praying for you and your family, because I hope the good Lord above, or whatever you believe in, spirituality wise, keeps you on this planet to continue to pay it forward and to serve others. Guys, I hope you listen to this, guys and gals, you midlifers. I appreciate y'all stopping by. I'm going to get Corey back on the show because he's got so much to give. And we talked about the law enforcement mental health and practices and stories. But I want to get him back on if he will. I want to talk about being a tactical athlete. All right. Because I have somebody that worked for me that just won the elite female tactical games. Megan Kennedy. Are you familiar with her?
No.
Yeah. Look her up.
Yeah, send me a link maybe.
Yeah. Because we're going to keep in touch. I hope you want to do that.
No, I would love to.
And yeah, she won the elite tactical games. And I want to talk about that process and how you got into that. And that's a community within itself. So everybody else, stay tuned for the next episode. And
Jared, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go right ahead, man.
I just want to leave you with this in your audience. This is kind of like my why statement to myself.
Do it.
And this is a quote from a Native American chief. Love your life, perfect your life, beautify all things in your life, Seek to make your life long in its purpose and the service of your people. Chief Tecumseh.
Amen.
Yeah.
And we're out.